continuing struggle for self-determination and effective control of the lands and resources stolen from them. Such an acknowledgement, which is becoming common amongst those of us working in settler colonies, has a different potential in Singapore, a hub where the cultures of the region have moved for many generations, often servicing a consistent thirst from competing imperial powers. This makes it sometimes difficult to articulate Singapore into the histories of migration of the Austronesian peoples who travelled down from what's now Taiwan to the Pacific and across the Indonesian archipelago to the Indian Ocean, a migration which is theorised by indigenous Pacific scholarship. But acknowledging these longer intergenerational time spans suppressed by capitalist futurity brings us into a productive conversation about our genres of gathering together, as Rux Media Collective articulated for us earlier in the week. And under these times of COVID-19, we're all being asked to activate new forms of exchange and sharing, and this brings new opportunities as well as new challenges. In this symposium, postgraduate researchers from McNally School of FineArts and LaSalle College of the Arts and Centre of Visual Art are coming together to explore historical and contemporary cultural exchanges in the arts, addressing time, space, disciplinary exchange, and cross-island exchange. The presentations provide a glimpse of the cutting-edge research conducted by postgraduates at McNally and CoVA and jointly point towards the increasing awareness and significance of cultural transformation as a mode of work for contemporary artistic researchers. I'd like to here acknowledge the work of Chloe Ho and Alicia Bug from the CoVA Graduate Academy, who have organised this symposium for CoVA, and Eleanor Simcoe and Susie Fraser in CoVA for their support. After the keynote by Professor Claire Bishop, there will be 4 panels of postgraduate presentations, which all look really exciting. And there's also a Facebook live stream where you can hang out between the talks. Those of you who are on Facebook Live, welcome, but you won't be able to ask questions from there. We're going to close today with the keynote address by artist Sophie Pick. To begin, I'd like to ask Dr. Venka Purushothaman, Vice President Academic and Provost at LaSalle College of the Arts, and Professor Sue Baker, Vice-Chancellor, Community and Cultural Partnerships and Director, Centre of Visual Art, to make some brief opening remarks. Venka is an award-winning art writer and academic with a distinguished career in cultural and creative industries in Singapore, and listing all of Venka's achievements would take up the entire first part of this symposium, so I won't do that. But I'll simply note that he is one of the University of Melbourne's most distinguished alums, and it's truly fitting to have you opening this exchange between the institution that you now lead and the site of your own graduate research, Venka. So welcome, and I'll hand you the floor.
Thank you, Danny. Good morning, Professor Sue Baker, Vice-Chancellor, Community and Cultural Partnership and Director of Centre of Visual Arts, University of Melbourne. Danny, for the wonderful introduction from Victorian College of the Arts. I also warmly welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Claire Bishop, colleagues from the LaSalle College of the Arts, McNally School of FineArts, and University of Melbourne, participating artists, scholars, researchers, students, and friends. It is my pleasure to be here this morning for the opening of Archipelagic Encounters. It is fantastic to see an intimate group of emerging artists, scholars, and researchers come together to explore the encounters of geographic, cultural, artistic, and anthropocenic proportion. The theme of the symposium is really apt for the times we live in the midst of a global pandemic and the rise of nationalism. Some years ago, I edited an art journal edition focused on islands. In my introduction, I actually drew attention to 2 quotes, which still remain relevant today. The first is from Gilles Deleuze's Desert Islands and Other Text, where he said some islands drifted away from the continent, but the island is also that toward which one drifts. Other islands originated in the ocean, but the island is also the origin, radical, and absolute. Deleuze, known for bridging geography and philosophy, provides an ontological perspective. The island is the origin, radical, and absolute, breaking away from the essentialist doxa such as castigation and loneliness to a place where the incidental and adventurous come to play. There is metaphor at play, and we can read this sense of castigation, loneliness, palpable in the global environment today, distracting us from the potency of islands. Secondly, Derrida says that there is no world, there are only islands. In speaking of the concept of loneliness, Derrida's reading of this in The Beast and Sovereign maps the possibility that loneliness and islands draw attention to consideration. There's no such thing as a common world, a unified world. Loneliness can be ambiguous, and Derrida considers the possibility of the affected and the disaffected drawing closer to, in this loneliness, to a common unity. Archipelagic Encounters provides a timely encounter of islands scattered in water, breaking away from the whole. History shows that seafarers and fishing communities of Southeast Asia saw the sea and its waters as their home, while returning daily to the land merely for respite. This significantly informs the political, economic battles of South China Sea, around which a string of fractured archipelagic nation-states claim rights, for the sea is where they are embodied as communities. Coming from Singapore, Singapore itself, like Hong Kong, remains a port of commerce, yet more importantly, a site for socio-cultural identities and transmigrational practices over the centuries. They do not represent the idyllic, but rather a microcosmic world-making in the mirror of great continents. Singapore's world-making function rely heavily on negotiation with islands weaved in its archipelagic logic. The emerging contemporary island is a heterotropic space, and while integral and key to 21st century world-making, it is a site of geopolitical determinism today. So with that viewpoint, I would like to close. Before I close, I would like to really thank my colleagues from the McNally School of Fine Arts, Head of School, Dr. S. Chandrasekaran, MA Fine Arts Program Leader, Dr. Ian Wu, MA Asian Art Histories Program Leader, Mr. Jeffrey Say, and Senior Lecturer Adeline Quay for making this joint initiative possible. Finally, to all participants, make the best out of today's session. Speaking island to island, that is Singapore and Australia, I hope your journey today leads to a lifelong endearment to collaborative processes as these island communities have always represented. Thank you and have a good morning.
Thank you very much, Venka, for those very apposite reflections on the possibilities of this island exchange. I'll pass now to Professor Sue Baker, Director of Centre of Visual Arts at University of Melbourne. Sue, as many of you will know, is a leading arts academic and artist who's often called upon for expert advice and has written on the shifting needs of arts education and has really led discussion in Australia about the role of the art school in the 21st century. And she is also the Pro-Vice-Chancellor Community and Cultural Partnerships and really a tremendous advocate for the work of all of us in the arts inside the university sector. Thanks very much, Sue, for coming along.
Thank you very much, Danny. And Venka, it's so wonderful to be sharing this space with you. We have talked many times about working together, and I'm hoping this is, manifestation of that. The beginning of many more. I'm on the lands of the Dja-Dja-Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation in central Victoria. And I would pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging and note that the long history, the history longer than we can imagine is around us at all times here. The local communities of elders and Indigenous people have navigated their land title and their relationship to this country. And I'm relatively new to it, and I'm looking forward to being much more involved in understanding where I live and on what ground. I acknowledge the unceded lands, the rights, and the continuing custodianship of Indigenous people in Australia. The Centre of Visual Arts, which is 3 years old and established at the VCA in partnership with the Faculty of Arts in particular areas relating to art history, was set up to really create a sort of a new dialogue, not only within the university but with our neighbours. We're all highly conscious of the false, or the colonial, but false borders, false relationships that have been, in a sense, a condition of our colonial lives. And we are working directly against maintaining such barriers. We in Australia have finally, I think, in many of our communities, recognised where we live in the world, that we're not an outpost of the British Empire, although technically we still are. But we are now becoming a much more conscious of where we are in the world, and this has become a big focus for the work of the Centre of Visual Arts. We hope to partner and to work closely with our neighbours in this region. We have much to learn from them. We have much to learn from relationships with a city such as Singapore, where, as Venka and I have discussed a number of times, it is an extraordinary melting pot, if I can use that overused term, of communities and cultures that maintain a connection with their heritage. So I think this symposium, the work of the Graduate Academy that we're very keen to promote and to encourage as a core part of CoVA's mission, is in a way the vanguard, and the way that we're going to develop at these relationships in the future are through these forums. These are the forums that have a future for the young emerging artists and scholars, and it is, in a way, because it is their future, and they are the leaders coming through our communities. I'm in great awe and have great respect for the work they're doing. I'm looking forward to seeing the work unfold from this very important webinar, from the 3 or 4 days that we are engaged in this conversation. And for me, it's a sign of hope and optimism that we have such talent and such emerging strength in the graduates that are coming out of our respective institutions. So it is a pleasure for me to be here. I'm really looking forward to participating in the background, listening and watching, and again, Venka, nice to see you. Great to be partnering with you on this, and look forward to many more occasions. So thanks very much, Danny.
Thank you, Sue. And in complete agreement that the potential of our institution to further develop its relationships with our colleagues in the region is still has a long way to go, and we've been making a number of significant steps. And I think the work of the Graduate Academy on this exchange is really exciting.